Selections from the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. My Master, Part 31, Section 2. Many of you perhaps have read the article by Professor Max Muller in a recent issue of the 19th century, headed A Real Mahatman. The life of Sri Ramakrishna is interesting as it was a living illustration of the ideas that he preached. Perhaps it will be a little dramatic for you who live in the West in an atmosphere entirely different from that of India. For the methods and manners in the busy rush of life in the West vary entirely from those of India. Yet perhaps it will be of all the more interest for that because it will bring into a newer light things about which many have already heard. It was while reforms of various kinds were being inaugurated in India that a child was born of poor Brahmin parents on the 18th of February 1836 in one of the remote villages of Bengal. The father and the mother were very orthodox people. The life of a really orthodox Brahmin is one of continuous renunciation. Very few things can he do, and over and beyond them, the orthodox Brahmin must not occupy himself with any secular business. At the same time, he must not receive gifts from anybody. You may imagine how rigorous that life becomes. You have heard of the Brahmins and their priestcraft many times, but very few of you have ever stopped to ask what makes this wonderful band of men the rulers of their fellows. They are the poorest of all the classes in the country, and the secret of their power lies in their renunciation. They never covet wealth. Theirs is the poorest priesthood in the world, and therefore the most powerful. Even in this poverty, a Brahmin's wife will never allow a poor man to pass through the village without giving him something to eat. That is considered the highest duty of the mother in India, and because she is the mother, it is her duty to be served last. She must see that everyone is served before her turn comes. That is why the mother is regarded as God in India. This particular woman, the mother of our subject, was a very type of a Hindu mother. The higher the caste, the greater the restrictions. The lowest caste people can eat and drink anything they like. But as men rise in the social scale, more and more restrictions come. And when they reach the highest caste, the Brahmin, the hereditary priesthood of India, their lives, as I have said, are very much circumscribed. Compared to Western manners, their lives are of continuous asceticism. The Hindus are perhaps the most exclusive nation in the world. They have the same great steadiness as the English, but much more amplified. When they get hold of an India, they carry it out to its very conclusion, and they keep hold of it generation after generation until they make something out of it. Once give them an idea, and it is not easy to take it back, but it is hard to make them grasp a new idea. The Orthodox Hindus, therefore, are very exclusive, living entirely within their own horizon of thought and feeling. Their lives are laid down in our old books in every little detail, and the least detail is grasped with almost adamantine firmness by them. They would starve rather than eat a meal cooked by the hands of a man not belonging to their own small section of caste. But withal, they have intensity and tremendous earnestness. That force of intense faith and religious life occurs often among the Orthodox Hindus because their very orthodoxy comes from a tremendous conviction that it is right. We may not all think that what they hold on to with such perseverance is right, but to them it is. Now it is written in our books that a man should always be charitable even to the extreme. If a man starves himself to death to help another man to save that man's life, it is all right. It is even held that a man ought to do that. And it is expected of a Brahmin to carry this idea out to the very extreme. Those who are acquainted with the literature of India will remember a beautiful old story about this extreme charity, how a whole family, as related in the Mahabharata, starved themselves to death and gave their last meal to a beggar. This is not an exaggeration, for such things still happen. The character of the father and the mother of my master was very much like that. Very poor they were, and yet many a time the mother would starve herself a whole day to help a poor man. Of them this child was born, and he was a peculiar child from very boyhood. He remembered his past from his birth and was conscious for what purpose he came into the world, and every power was devoted to the fulfillment of that purpose. While he was quite young, his father died, and the boy was sent to school. A Brahmin's boy must go to school. The caste restricts him to a learned profession only. The old system of education in India, still prevalent in many parts of the country, especially in connection with the sannyasins, is very different from the modern system. The students had not to pay. It was thought that knowledge is so sacred that no man ought to sell it. Knowledge must be given freely and without any price. The teachers used to take students without charge, and not only so, most of them gave the students food and clothes. To support these teachers, the wealthy families, on certain occasions such as a marriage festivals or at the ceremonies for the dead, made gifts to them. They were considered the first and foremost claimants to certain gifts, and they in their turn had to maintain the students. So, whenever there is a marriage, especially in a rich family, these professors are invited and they attend and discuss various subjects. This boy went to one of these gatherings of professors, and the professors were discussing various topics such as logic or astronomy, subjects much beyond his age. The boy was peculiar, as I have said, and he gathered this moral out of it. This is the outcome of all their knowledge. Why are they fighting so hard? It is simply for money. The man who can show the highest learning here will get the best pair of clothes, and that is all these people are struggling for. I will not go to school any more. And he did not. That was the end of his going to school. But this boy had an elder brother, a learned professor, who took him to Calcutta, however, to study with him. After a short time, the boy became fully convinced that the aim of all secular learning was mere material advancement and nothing more, and he resolved to give up study and devote himself solely to the pursuit of spiritual knowledge. The father being dead, the family was very poor, and this boy had to make his own living. He went to a place near Calcutta and became a temple priest. To become a temple priest is thought very degrading to a Brahmin. Our temples are not churches in your sense of the word, they are not places for public worship. For properly speaking, there is no such thing as public worship in India. Temples are erected mostly by rich person as a meritorious religious act. If a man has such property, he wants to build a temple. In that, he puts a symbol or an image of an incarnation of God and dedicates it to worship in the name of God. The worship is akin to that which is conducted in Roman Catholic churches, very much like the Mass, reading certain sentences from the sacred books, waving a light before the image, and treating the image in every respect as we treat a great man. This is all that is done in the temple. The man who goes to a temple is not considered thereby a better man than he who never goes. More properly, the latter is considered the more religious man, for religion in India is to each man his own private affair. In the house of every man there is either a little chapel or a room set apart, and there he goes morning and evening, sits down in a corner, and there does his worship. And this worship is entirely mental, for another man does not hear or know what he is doing. He seems him only sitting there, and perhaps moving his fingers in a peculiar fashion, or closing his nostrils and breathing in a peculiar manner. Beyond that, he does not know what his brother is doing, even his wife perhaps will not know. Thus, all worship is conducted in the privacy of his own home. Those who cannot afford to have a chapel go to the banks of a river or a lake or the sea if they live at the seaside. But people sometimes go to worship in a temple by making salutation to the image. There their duty to the temple ends. Therefore, you see, it has been held from the most ancient times in our country legislated upon by Manu that it is degenerating occupation to become a temple priest. Some of the books say it is so degrading as to make a Brahmin worthy of reproach, just as with education, but in a far more intense sense with religion. There is the other idea behind it that the temple priests who take fees for their work are making merchandise of sacred things. So you may imagine the feelings of that boy when he was forced through poverty to take up the only occupation open to him, that of a temple priest. There have been various poets in Bengal whose songs have passed down to the people. They are sung in the streets of Calcutta and in every village. Most of these are religious songs, and their one central idea, which is perhaps peculiar to the religions of India, is the idea of realization. There is not a book in India on religion which does not breathe this idea. Man must realize God, feel God, see God, talk to God. That is religion. The Indian atmosphere is full of stories of saintly persons having visions of God. Such doctrines form the basis of their religion, and all these ancient books and scriptures are the writings of persons who came into direct contact with spiritual facts. These books were not written for the intellect, nor can any reasoning understand them, because they were written by men who saw the things of which they wrote, and they can be understood only by men who have raised themselves to the same height. They say there is such a thing as realization even in this life, and it is open to everyone, and religion begins with the opening of this faculty, if I may call it so. This is the central idea in all religions, and this is why we may find one man with the most finished rhetorical powers or the most convincing logic, preaching the highest doctrines and yet unable to get people to listen to him, while we may find another, a poor man who scarcely can speak the language of his own motherland, yet half the nation worships him in his own lifetime as God. When in India the idea somehow or other gets abroad that a man has raised himself to that state of realization, that religion is no more a matter of conjecture to him, that he is no more groping in the dark in such momentous questions as religion. The immortality of the soul and God, people come from all quarters to see him, and gradually they begin to worship him. In the temple was an image of the blissful mother. This boy had to conduct the worship morning and evening, and by degrees this one idea filled his mind. Is there anything behind this image? Is it true that there is a mother of bliss in the universe? Is it true that she lives and guides the universe, or is it all a dream? Is there any reality in religion? This skepticism comes to the Hindu child. It is the skepticism of our country. Is this what we are doing real? And theories will not satisfy us, although there are ready at hand almost all the theories that have ever been made with regard to God and soul. Neither books nor theories can satisfy us. The one idea that gets hold of thousands of our people is this idea of realization. Is it true that there is a God? If it be true, can I see him? Can I realize the truth? The Western mind may think all this very impracticable, but to us it is intensely practical. For this idea, men will give up their lives. You have just heard how from the earliest times there have been persons who have given up all comforts and luxuries to live in caves, and hundreds have given up their homes to weep bitter tears of misery on the banks of sacred rivers in order to realize this idea. Not to know in the ordinary sense of the word, not intellectual understanding, not a mere rationalistic comprehension of the real thing, not mere groping in the dark, but intense realization, much more real than this world is to our senses. That is the idea. I do not advance any proposition as to that just now, but that is the one fact that is impressed upon them. Thousands will be killed, other thousands will be ready. So, upon this one idea, the whole nation for thousands of years have been denying and sacrificing themselves. For this idea, thousands of Hindus every year give up their homes, and many of them die through the hardships they have to undergo. To the Western mind, this must seem most visionary, and I can see the reason for this point of view. But though I have resided in the West, I still think this idea the most practical thing in life. Every moment I think of anything else is so much loss to me. Even the marvels of earthly sciences, everything is vain if it takes me away from that thought. Life is but momentary. Whether you have the knowledge of an angel or the ignorance of an animal, life is but momentary. Whether you have the poverty of the poorest man in rags or the wealth of the richest living person. Life is but momentary, whether you are a downtrodden man living in one of the big streets of the big cities of the West or a crowned emperor ruling over millions. Life is but momentary, whether you have the best of health or the worst. Life is but momentary, whether you have the most poetical temperament or the most cruel. There is but one solution of life, says the Hindu, and that solution is what they call God and religion. If these be true, life becomes explained, life becomes bearable, becomes enjoyable. Otherwise, life is but a useless burden. That is our idea, but no amount of reasoning can demonstrate it. It can only make it probable, and there it rests. The highest demonstration of reasoning that we have in any branch of knowledge can only make a fact probable and nothing further. The most demonstrable facts of physical science are only probabilities, not facts yet. Facts are only in the senses. Facts have to be perceived, and we have to perceive religion to demonstrate it to ourselves. We have to sense God to be convinced that there is God. We must sense the facts of religion to know that they are facts. Nothing else and no amount of reasoning but our own perception can make these things real to us, can make my belief firm as a rock. That is my idea, and that is the Indian idea. This idea took possession of the boy, and his whole life became concentrated upon that. Day after day he would weep and say, "Mother, is it true that thou existest, or is it all poetry? Is a blissful mother an imagination of poets and misguided people, or is there such a reality?" We have seen that of books of education in our sense of the word he had none, and so much the more natural, so much the more healthy was his mind, so much the purer his thoughts, undiluted by drinking in the thoughts of the others. Because he did not go to the university, therefore he thought for himself. Because we have spent half our lives in the university, we are filled with a collection of other people's thoughts. Well has Professor Max Muller said in the article I have just referred to that this was a clean, original man. And the secret of that originality was that he was not brought up within the precincts of a university. However, this thought, whether God can be seen, which was uppermost in his mind, gained in strength every day until he could think of nothing else. He could no more conduct the worship properly, could no more attend to the various details in all their minuteness. Often he would forget to place a food offering before the image. Sometimes he would forget to wave the light. At other times he would wave it for hours and forget everything else. And that one idea was in his mind every day. Is it true that thou existest, O mother? Why dost thou not speak? Art thou dead? Perhaps some of us here will remember that there are moments in our lives when, tired of all these ratiocinations of dull and dead logic, tired of plodding through books, which after all teach us nothing, become nothing but a sort of intellectual opium eating, we must have it at stated times, or we die, tired with all these, the heart of our heart sends out a wail. Is there no one in this universe who can show me the light? If thou art, show the light unto me. Who dost thou not speak? Why dost thou make thyself so scarce? Why send so many messengers, and not thyself come to me? In this world of fights and factions, whom am I to follow and believe? If thou art the God of every man and woman alike, why comest thou not to speak to thy child and see if he is not ready? Well, to us all come such thoughts in moments of great depression, but such are the temptations surrounding us that the next moment we forget. For the moment, it seemed that the doors of heavens were going to be opened. For the moment, it seemed as if we were going to plunge into the light effulgent. But the animal man again shakes off all these angelic visions. Down we go, animal man, once more eating and drinking and dying and drinking and eating again and again. But there are exceptional minds which are not turned away so easily, which once attracted can never be turned back. Whatever may be the temptation in the way, which want to see the truth, knowing that life must go. They say, let it go in a noble conquest, and what conquest is nobler than the conquest of the lower man, than this solution of the problem of life and death, of good and evil? At last it became impossible for him to serve in the temple. He left it and entered into a little wood that was near and lived there. About this part of his life he told me many times that he could not tell when the sun rose or set, or how he lived. He lost all thought of himself and forgot to eat. During this period he was lovingly watched over by a relative who put into his mouth food which he mechanically swallowed. Days and nights thus passed with the boy. When a whole day would pass towards the evening, when the peal of bells in the temples and the voices singing would reach the wood, it would make the boy very sad, and he would cry, "Another day is gone in vain, mother, and thou hast not come. Another day of this short life has gone, and I have not known the truth." In the agony of his soul, sometimes he would rub his face against the ground and weep, and this one prayer burst forth, "Do thou manifest thyself in me, thou mother of the universe. See that I need thee and nothing else." Verily he wanted to be true to his own ideal. He had heard that the mother never came until everything had been given up for her. He had heard that the mother wanted to come to everyone, but they would not have her. That people wanted all sorts of foolish little idols to pray to, that they wanted their own enjoyments and not the mother, and that the moment they really wanted her with their whole soul and nothing else, that moment she would come. So he began to break himself into that idea. He wanted to be exact even on the plane of matter. He threw away all the little property he had and took a vow that he would never touch money, and this one idea, "I will not touch money," became a part of him. It may appear to be something occult, but even in afterlife, when he was sleeping, if I touched him with a piece of money, his hand would become bent and his whole body would become, as it were, paralyzed. The other idea that came into his mind was that lust was the other enemy. Man is a soul, and the soul is sexless, neither man nor woman. The idea of sex and the idea of money were the two things he thought that prevented him from seeing the mother. This whole universe is a manifestation of the mother, and she lives in every woman's body. Every woman represents the mother, and how can I think of woman in mere sex relation? That was the idea. Every woman was his mother. He must bring himself to the state when he would see nothing but mother in every woman, and he carried it out in his life. That is the tremendous thirst that seizes the human heart. Later on, this very man said to me, "My child, suppose there is a bag of gold in one room and a robber in the next room. Do you think that the robber can sleep? He cannot. His mind will always be thinking how to get into that room and obtain possession of that gold. Do you think that man, firmly persuaded that there is a reality behind all these appearances, that there is a God, that there is one who never dies, one who is infinite bliss, a bliss compared with which these pleasures of the senses are simply playthings, can rest contented without struggling to attain it? Can he cease his efforts for a moment? No, he will become mad with longing." This divine madness seized the boy. At that time he had no teacher, nobody to tell him anything, and everyone thought that he was out of his mind. This is the ordinary condition of things. If a man throws aside the vanities of the world, we hear him called mad. But such men are the salt of the earth. Out of such madness have come the powers that have moved this world of ours, and out of such madness alone will come the powers of the future that are going to move the world. So, days, weeks, months passed in continuous struggle of the soul to arrive at truth. The boy began to see visions, to see wonderful things. The secrets of his nature were beginning to open to him. Veil after veil was, as it were, being taken off. Mother herself became the teacher and initiated the boy into the truths he sought. At this time there came to this place a woman of beautiful appearance, learned beyond compare. Later on, this saint used to say about her that she was not learned but was the embodiment of learning. She was learning itself in human form. There too you find the peculiarity of the Indian nation. In the midst of ignorance in which the average Hindu woman lives, in the midst of what is called in Western countries her lack of freedom, there could arise a woman of supreme spirituality. She was a sannyasini, for women also give up the world, throw away their property, do not marry, and devote themselves to the worship of the Lord. She came, and when she heard of this boy in the grove, she offered to go and see him, and hers was the first help he received. At once she recognized what his trouble was, and she said to him, "My son, blessed is the man upon whom such madness comes. The whole of this universe is mad, some for wealth, some for pleasure, some for fame, some for 100 other things. They are mad for gold or husbands or wives, for little trifles, mad to tyrannize over somebody, mad to become rich, mad for every foolish thing except God. And they can understand only their own madness. When another man is mad after gold, they have fellow feeling and sympathy for him, and they say he is the right man, as lunatics think that lunatics alone are sane. But if a man is mad after the beloved, after the Lord, how can they understand? They think he has gone crazy, and they say have nothing to do with him. That is why they call you mad, but yours is the right kind of madness. Blessed is the man who is mad after God. Such men are very few." This woman remained near the boy for years, taught him the forms of the religions of India, initiated him into the different practices of yoga, and as it were, guided and brought into the harmony this tremendous river of spirituality.